Well, welcome everyone to Cloudstep Collective. My name is Darryl Knight and I'm a partner at J2 Solutions. Joining me today is Jason Izzett. Jason is the co-founder and director and creator of Cloudstep. And Jason will be sharing his experiences and why Cloudstep was created. So the agenda for today's session, we're going to discuss what Cloudstep is, what are the issues we see being faced by customers and our partner organisations, and why we set about building it. We're going to do a demo and we're going to discuss how to engage and where to get started. So J2 Solutions is a ICT advisory and engineering business with guys and girls who've had at least 10 years experience in some form of cloud computing. Over the past couple of years during Cloudstep's development, we've modelled over 30 odd organisations, ranging in size from say a small regional council or retail company with as few as 100 staff and a handful of VMs, through to large, very large state government departments with several thousand VMs and hundreds of applications. We've worked across a variety of sectors, government as mentioned, retail, banking, and power and energy companies. We found that our customers are at different levels of cloud awareness, maturity, and experience, but they've all got a desire to understand better the current cost of delivering their environment and how much a move to cloud will cost, and importantly, when is the right time for them to do it. So look, I'm the sales guy, right? And like all sales guys, I'm hungry for action and getting our customers to make a decision. But hasn't our approach to selling changed over the years? It's not a push sell anymore. Our customers are smart, they research what they need and they make purchasing decisions based on the knowledge that they've built over time. But cloud computing is a little different. It's more complex. Most customers want to move there, or they've even put a workload here or there across. But the shift from CapEx to OpEx means they don't know how much a complete migration will truly cost them. What's the cash flow going to look like, or how and when is the right time to get there? So it's not so much a technology question, it's more of a finance question. Hence, our audience for Cloudstep can be either finance or technology, but preferably both. Granted, there are vendor calculators, spreadsheets, and other tools available that help solve different problems. But we believe Cloudstep provides that clarity needed to accelerate customer action because it's building a total cost picture for their environment. So we're going to explore these and many other issues in more detail, and we're going to have a live demo, and at the end of the demo we'll have time for Q&A. If you've joined this webinar session and you're looking at it in terms of a delayed recording, then by all means send your questions through to us at sales@cloudstep.io, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Everybody, just wanted to share some of the issues that we face with the customers that we work with, and we're pretty sure that other consulting firms see the same thing. There's really four steps or stages the customer might be at where they're looking to explore the idea of using perhaps they've already done. I'll generally take a step back and say, put action plans in a little more detail prior to a migration, and then manage the steady state afterwards. Often following this, there's a period of reform as well. What I've found in the past doing consulting work in this space is that we're very good at talking about technical and operational issues, but we're rarely very good at talking about commercial and financial issues. So what you can see on the screen here is what we see as the sorts of questions and issues that arise at each of these particular points in the process. So what I said about building was a tool that would assist with the commercial, operational, and technical planning and migration of organisations' workloads to public cloud. So some of the questions that get asked, the really tough ones are, is it cheaper, and how much will that actually cost, and what's the cost of transition? And these are the sorts of questions that if you can answer them well and you can actually demonstrate evidence behind it, then you end up getting to a trusted advisor perspective with a customer ahead of technology and into commercial. We also realise that there's very rarely any new money in an environment or in people's IT budgets, We'd like to find money that could be better spent and look at redirecting that towards a cloud spend. Right, so what we can see here is the Cloudstep tool, bunch of navigation on the left and right hand side. But what we've got here is a dashboard that shows where we are with the model. As you can imagine, modern IT environments are pretty complex, and we might be modeling hundreds or thousands of elements. How do we make sure that we've actually got a good view of that? In Cloudstep, we don't just look at the application or the physical infrastructure and the relationships between those. We actually look a bit further up the stack at the teams that use applications, the functions they carry out with those applications, and of course the apps themselves. We're very focused on the app as the workload, with the server and other infrastructure really being house bricks that go towards making up the environment. What I might do is show one or two of these so you can see how we visualize this information. I'm just going to close off some of the navigation on the sides there. We're very financially focused in Cloudstep, so what we can see here when looking at this particular application is all of the individual costs of the servers and so forth that go to make it up. You can see that there's quite a few. It's a really important thing to show the complexity of environments and how they change over time. We're very interested in the hierarchy of information and also the timeline, which is to say when are pieces of infrastructure or applications in the environment and not. What I'm showing here is the application in the middle, and then the functions and the teams above it, and then underneath the infrastructure that's used to deliver the application. Here we're looking at an app that's delivered on-premise on a handful of servers and is later implemented in an Azure migration to infrastructure as a service. Let's look at the implementation costs though. It's important with an application to understand exactly when and where the costs are involved. When we're looking at the a migration to Azure, we can see that the on-premise implementation comes to an end in the sort of 2018-2019 year. And I'm just going to scroll down and show you what the costs may look like there. Quite a lot of different components, ESX servers, data centers and so forth. We make sure that we can encompass all of those costs, showing where they are. Further down, we can see what that would look like if we were to move it into public cloud. The cost profile changes up, down, but we can see how it moves across that period. So it's important to look at an individual application, but it's also good to look at a server. So let's explore what a physical server looks like. So we'll pick this database server, click on that and show what that looks like as a cost profile per month. So we can see there that it comes to an end, but it's costing nearly $1,000 a month to run. We may actually move it to Azure, and we've figured out that the particular type of server that we're interested in. Showing the infrastructure as a service costs here. Cloudstep looks through the entire product portfolio from Microsoft, including hybrid use benefits, included or excluded software, on-demand hourly pricing, 1 year and 3 year reserved, and works out the cheapest price for the server being moved. And that ends up giving us an apples and apples view. So we've got a server here that's costing about 800, and on-premise it was costing roughly 800 as well. So kind of break even on that one. But let's look at how we actually plan the migrations. We have a scheduling tool that can show us, for a given scenario, in this case, an Azure migration, when are we going to be moving applications and to where? So I'll just pause for a little bit on this grid here. This is our planning tool that allows us to determine the starting point for applications. They're all pretty much on-premise in this particular customer. And then some of them are moving to software as a service with various subscription fees. Some of them are moving to infrastructure as a service where we're effectively translating those servers across to Azure. Some of them are being retired. Now, This actually allows you to drag these applications around in a sort of a Kanban board type of view, and that will then reflect the financial plan above it. So we're very focused on what the current state is, what the future state is going to look like, and that the numbers and financials should fall out of that. So this tool actually keeps us in the operational and the work, and then the money follows automatically. So I might show you a little bit of how that comes together. While it's interesting and useful to see the cost profiles for an individual server, what actually matters is the total spend in the environment over a period of time. So what we do is we work out the monthly running costs in capital and operational costs for a given scenario, and then break those down even further into applications, infrastructure, projects, capital and operating budgets aligned by financial year. This is a great way of framing up the discussion around what the actuals are and what the future state might look like. As an overall view, we can also show a comparison of different scenarios. So here we have an on-premise refresh where we've effectively got a flat operational cost profile with a series of capital expenditures. And then in the cloud, we can look at what the cost differences look like. Here it's a roughly break-even case, but in most cases we see a 20% reduction in operational costs post a migration. What I will show is a financial overview of the state of a migration from an on-premise scenario all the way through to a public cloud move. What we'll typically see during a migration is the costs increase, and then for there to be a commensurate reduction in the operational costs on the way through. These are broken down into different categories that can be examined and understood, but what we want to do is paint a picture that there is a cost increase during transition because change costs money, but that there's savings at the end of it. We're able to display this information through this web tool, but also through Excel as well. In general, we find that chief financial officers aren't interested in looking at some website. What they want is a spreadsheet that they can poke holes in and prove whether or not you're right or wrong. Yet another view of the financials is a cost profile. So we're able to show in categories of costs what those are and how they vary over each of the financial years. So we've got facilities, cloud infrastructure, labour and licensing. But we're also able to change the scenario to an on-premise one in order to explore what those numbers look like in the on-premise world. So we can use this to validate whether or not the numbers are correct and then look at how they change over a period of time. Now this is all about the cloud, so let's look at the infrastructure as a service report. This actually tells us for the payload of servers that we have in the environment, what does it look like when we put it into Azure as either on-demand hourly pricing, 1 year or 3 year reserved, or hybrid use benefits. We can see here that we've got a calculated infrastructure as a service spend and some upfront fees. We don't have any in this case because we're actually picking hourly pricing. If we were to change it to a mix of hourly or 1 year and 3 year, we'll see these numbers change. We also can work out what the migration costs look like, how many servers will move to the cloud, and what the management fees might look like. Now, there's lots of different managed services providers in the environment, and we can actually ensure that we model the costs of all of them. It might be traditional ones that you already have or new ones in the marketplace. Here we can also see a breakdown and payload of all of the machines that we're actually looking to migrate. Now, this is the sort of work that generally takes many, many hours in a cost calculator or in a spreadsheet, but we're able to work this out on the fly as we go. We can pick a number of different profiles for the Azure machines, where some of them might use A and B series for non-production environments, and others yet still specific families, memory or CPU optimized. We also understand that there is an increasing use of platform services, and we're able to calculate Azure SQL and other platform services as part of the environment mix. But to build a very quick case for an infrastructure as a service lift and shift with some software as a service, Cloudstep's a great way of actually understanding that. So the main takeaway, I think, from what we do with Cloudstep is that we focus on what the change and the migration will look like, and that the financials will follow on from that. Often there's a case that's put to a CIO where everything's going to be fantastic, it's all very rosy and we can wave a wand and move everything. We all know that that's not the reality, that change can sometimes be painful and a bit bumpy, but we really need to understand what the costs are going to be from an external perspective, but also what is the internal resource and costs. During our planning processes, we actually work through what the business unit and tech SME costs are going to be in order to understand what the impact and effort is going to be required from the business. So that's a bit of a tour of Cloudstep as it stands, and we're happy to actually provide these in a bit more detail for anybody who wants to take a one-on-one deep dive, or for you to try it out and have a look at it yourself. Thanks a lot.
Demo, Jace. Now let's have a quick look at how Cloudstep is actually addressing the particular phases of a deployment program that you were looking at. So what we can see here is that Cloudstep's used to flesh out the business case before a serious investment of time is needed. So here at J2, what we've been able to do is generate professional services engagements that range from $15,000 to $50,000, depending on the size of the client. It's really the initial test to determine whether cloud is going to be a viable strategy moving forward. So I think that is very much the opportunity that lies ahead for the partner community. So what we're looking for is organisations that would like to run their customers through the Cloudstep planning piece, and we have a simple charging model which is $49 per month US, and you can see there that they are all the types of activities or outputs that can be delivered. So Jason went through demonstrating an understanding of organisations, teams, functions, and applications and how they hang together. And importantly, what we're finding is really helping organisations build an understanding of their current cost. As Jason mentioned before, there's no new money, so we very much have to find savings to pay for reform. We're also looking at, I guess, providing a financial lens across that current operation as well. What's the target environment going to look like? Is it Azure? Is it SaaS? Is it on-prem? It's a combination of all three. That's the reality. So on that planning board that we showed before, you'll see that you can change the intention or the target state of a particular application, and as a result of doing that, the financial model that sits behind it will be updated and refreshed. Importantly, we can model the lift and shift, but also most importantly, a machine optimized scenario, and looking at 1 year, 3 year and hybrid use benefits as well. So what are you getting? You're getting a 5-year TCO output, exportable in Excel, a cash flow model month by month over 5 years, and a detailed cost profiling per category. We're finding that an engagement is typically taking 4 to 6 weeks once we have engaged with a customer. The time frame really does depend a little bit on size and the complexity of their environment, and to a large extent how much the customer is prepared to lean in and actually furnish the information. The reality is, like any modelling tool, the model is only as good as the quality of information that's provided. I think the point of difference here is that we're using the customer's own cost information, so they build an enormous amount of confidence up front. But for some of them, it's actually quite difficult to find and locate that information, hence why it can take a little bit of time. When the model's not in use, we revert to a storage or a steady state, where we hold an instance or of the particular customer context that's being modelled, and there's just a holding fee there of $9 US per month. If you export as Excel and you choose to blow the model away, then you are absolutely entitled to do that, and then no more charges would accrue. So importantly, what we're looking at here is building the plan, but what happens after the plan? How do you then actually move to transition and migration? And we have another version of the model which will be available. So for $499 per month, we're doing a lot deeper dive on the program and task management that is available with Cloudstep, migration and wave planning, the effort to migrate applications, task scheduling and management. But we're going to save this up for a future webinar, which we'll be scheduling shortly, where we'll go through much more detail about this part of the particular program. So might just return and ask if there is any other questions. If not, we'd very much like to thank you for your time and joining us today. A recording will be made available. Any questions to sales@cloudstep.io. Thanks for joining us.